Hello, everybody. Welcome back to TSAM Digital. My name's Anam Khan, and today I have with me Ali Naqi. Ali is the CEO of American Institute of Artificial Intelligence, and today we will be discussing how AI can help the asset management industry. To kick things off, I will request Ali to give us a brief introduction about himself and let us know a little bit about American Institute of Artificial Intelligence.
Thank you. Great to be here. I specialize in finance and AI, combining them to create value for asset management firms. And my specialization essentially is to rebuild the economy today to what's known as AI economy. So I teach and I author books and I help companies to transition from the IT or digital economy to AI economy. So that's really my specialization. And this is exactly what American Institute of Artificial Intelligence does. That's what we do. We are based out of Washington, D.C. area, and we help companies and asset management firms, particularly to transition from IT digital economy to artificial intelligence based economy. And it requires a major strategic shift. And so we handhold and we are there for to manage and help and lead that transition.
Brilliant, brilliant. So my first question is, AI has been used in investment. What is different now and what has changed?
Sure, great question. So AI was used since 1990s, even probably before that, in investment analysis by quants mostly to develop strategy and analyze strategy. And those were the days, in which neural networks were coming out, and they applied them and very successfully and developed those strategies. Then now it has become pervasive. So what has happened now, it's not just about quants, it's about developing a very comprehensive strategy for the firm, for the entire firm. So marketing is using AI, sales is using AI, AUM management, you need AI, regulatory frameworks to manage that, you need AI, back office support, you need AI, invest portfolio management, you need AI. So now AI cannot just be approached as quant-centric transformation. It has all of these things built into it now. So at 4 levels, we need to know that things have changed. The first level is exactly what I mentioned. It is that now the entire company needs this transformation strategy because it's not just about quants. Number 2, that ESG has become a major factor now. So analyzing that alpha signal and combining traditional financial empirical analysis with ESG analysis is the second thing in which AI will be absolutely needed. The third thing is that as you, from your portfolio management perspective, the old strategy of managing portfolio based on a single strategy can now be very easily detected by your competitors. So you need to have that way of being able to manage a strategy through which you can transition when it becomes generic or too commoditized. And the fourth thing I think, which is very important, is that the companies you invest in, their competitive advantage now greatly is greatly dependent on artificial intelligence. So if you don't know about AI and you cannot really tell the difference between the potential companies that you're investing in, that which one of them will be applying AI better than others, then both stocks, they may have very similar existing fundamentals, but one of them would likely perform better if it's managing its AI strategy better. So to know that, to understand that, is the fourth part, which is extremely important and meaningful for today's world, the modern world.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And in what area or in what way do you think asset management firms lack the AI capabilities?
Yeah, that's another great question. So I think the mindset at this point in asset management tends to be, traditional asset management tends to be that we know what we're doing and there's a sense of safety in traditions. But what has happened is that technology has changed things. We see fintech coming in very, very strongly. We see that, so that mindset of, yes, there is something happening, but we feel safe. I think that's where we have to make a mental and strategic transition to start approaching things differently. So we need to be open to embrace change and to acknowledge the fact that things around us are changing. And this is not a minor change. This is being called a technological revolution of its own. It's not the extension or evolution of the digital revolution. It's completely different. Even the scientific paradigm itself is being questioned now. So what we need to do is to embrace that and not approach it in a non-serious way, or maybe doing it an IT project there, an IT project there, on an experimental mindset. We need to have a strategic mindset. We need to understand that the world has changed, and whether we like it or not, it will impact our business and and new type of forces. For example, we recently saw the rise of a new investment class, almost you can call them the retail investor class. So you see that how priorities are shifting and economy is shifting, and it's all being done because of this major technological paradigm shift that we're experiencing. So to say that my strategy worked in the last 20 years, um, by no means is a validation that your strategy will work for the next 20 years. So if you need to think about the next 20 years, you must embrace the power of AI and machine learning, which is unfolding right in front of our eyes now.
Mhm, mhm. And so MIT Sloan recently reported that majority of the AI projects fail. Why is that happening, and how can we stop it from happening?
Right. So the authors were focused on, they were trying to understand that why a lot of AI projects and machine learning and data science projects are failing, and or failing to deliver value. And that's, a valid question to ask. When I make investment in something, what is happening? And they point out several reasons. One of them was that people have they have a hammer, so they know that they can do something, and they're looking for nails. So
Mhm.
it's really running around and trying to find solutions for or problems, because you think you have a solution. Again, that's not a strategic mindset. Another point I think they mentioned was that there's inherent bias that you sometimes transition that into solutions, and you expect that somehow this is human bias that goes into solutions, because you are at the time of when you're selecting data to build your system, that's when you make that fundamental mistake. Another thing was you build a solution, but it's for the wrong audience, or so the wrong solution, for the wrong problem. So a lot of those things they point out. Just simplify these things into two categories.
Mhm.
One category is business side. The business side is approaching AI, ML, machine learning, from a tactical perspective. They think it's about a solution here, a solution there, not thinking of it as something far more strategic at an enterprise level, that you need to have a major strategic shift to understand and work with this paradigm. So that's the business side. On the technology side, we are approaching these projects, AI projects, as IT projects. That's a major, major error that we need to overcome. IT projects are done differently than AI projects. AI projects have their own processes, their own ways of doing things. I use this analogy, well, I explain to people that when you have traditional IT, you're making systems for data. So you make a system that processes data, stores data, analyzes data. You're making system for data. The key word here is for.
Mhm.
When you're doing AI ML, you are creating system from data. So you can see the difference, right? For versus from. So this system comes into being because of data. So data develops the solution itself, a pattern emerges, and that pattern is the solution, that learning that takes place from that data. So IT projects are very different than machine learning projects. Machine learning projects may take longer. You sometimes don't know if it will even work out or not, or how long it will take, or which algorithm will function better. So all of those questions go into play, and those are the things that organizations need to understand. So one, on the business side, approach it from a strategic level so that you're not just in a state of experimentation or in a state of non-serious, hey, let me try this, or it's a buzzword. So, or I read an article, I want to, just, test it. That's not the right mindset. From the business side, have a plan, have a strategy, a very, very thoroughly developed strategy for your strategic transformation from digital IT economy to your new AI economy. So that's one thing. On the IT side, develop the best practices that go with AI ML and that are very, very different than traditional IT best practices. I cover those things in my book.
Ali, you just mentioned about your book. Could you let our audience know a little bit about it?
Sure. My book is Artificial Intelligence for Asset Management and Investments. This is Wiley's book. And what it does is essentially it gives that comprehensive view of how to think about AI from a strategic perspective for asset management and investment firms from the business side, as well as from the technology side. So what I just talked about, what we lack right now, one is obviously from the business side that we are now approaching it from a tactical or a non-serious experimental mindset. And this book gives you an entire strategy on how to overcome that mindset and to understand it at a deeper strategic level, what this transformation is. So it lays down that path for executives and asset managers to understand that transformation. On the technology side, it helps build those best practices that are necessary, even at an organizational level, the kinds of things that you would need to change, the way you need to think about your organization. You would need a very different kind of data management organization, and not just one, multiple focus area within data management and data science and all of those things. So I cover all that. And then I also cover ESG related issues as well as governance and ethics, which need to be a critical part of as we embrace this new paradigm of the AI economy. Governance and ethics would constitute as one of the most important things. Otherwise, the technology has a potential to create great benefit, but it can also cause great harm. So to overcome that harm, we need to have that governance and ethical framework in there. So this book covers all of those topics. Thank you
Really,
for asking.
it sounds very, very interesting. And we'll share a link with the audience later on. My next question is, how can asset management firms have a competitive advantage with AI?
Sure. So most importantly, your core. At the center of your strategy is your analytical analytical strength, and that is something that you need to approach right away to make sure that you can apply machine learning and in your strategy development frameworks, in your analytical frameworks, in your portfolio management frameworks at your level. Second thing is be aware of the transition that's taking place as this new investment class develops, which is on the retail investor side, and how they approach things. And then to give them access and to bring them in and to understand, develop a deeper level of understanding of your customers would be key. And that is by using AI, you can do that. So what that does is essentially it brings your customer close to you. It brings your investors close to you and closer, and from a perspective of develops a new level of empathy that you can have and fully understand their needs, that then you can reflect in your portfolio strategy, portfolio management strategy. So that's another important element of competitive advantage. Third is your AUM communicate. So your communications to institutional investors. Now, management of institutional investors is obviously is becoming very, very sophisticated now. You have to differentiate yourself. You have to stand out, but at the same time, you have to understand them. And so that's a totally different from just smaller investors. This would be focusing on large investors. Similar principles apply, though, but at the same time, the level of empathy that you would need there would be very important. Um, any kind of presentations, documents, coverage by institutional investors to capture all that knowledge, all that information, bring it in and be able to analyze it and develop that customized strategy for them, and pricing model and all that will be very, very important for you. And that will be your competitive advantage. If you can do it better than your competitors, obviously that will be something important for you. And the last thing I think is the regulatory part. So, and ethical part and ESG part, if you can combine all three. So now that you're looking for alpha signals in your ESG strategy, as well as regulatory management is so important now. So, and you cannot take a hit on that side. So having approaching that and building that as a competitive advantage, doing good and while getting business results, it's just amazing thing to do these days with stakeholder capitalism that's coming our way. So if you think about this, that will be your competitive advantage. People wouldn't want to, they don't want to do business with irresponsible firms. So that responsibility-centric investment, it also says something on the behavioral side about you and about your firm. If you're responsible with ESG, if you're responsible with environment, with social, with governance parts, that means you'll be responsible on the investor side, investment side also. So I think this is a really great paradigm that has been unleashed now and needs to be combined with AI, so that otherwise managing this whole area will become impossible without having that intelligent automation that has to be part of your overall strategy. So this is what I think will help create that competitive advantage.
Mhm, mhm. And we're reaching towards our last question, Ali. To wrap up this discussion, how much time do we have to embrace this change before it's too late?
That's a great question, and you don't have much time. And I will be as blunt as possible. You have just seen how certain the paradigm change that's taking place. So it's not I should not say that if you know that traditions should be just thrown out. No, traditions should not be thrown out, but the recognition that something major has happened, that something, a paradigm shift has happened, and to take that seriously and strategically, you don't have much time left for that. I'll give you a parallel example in a different industry. For example, that many companies try to go digital, in the retail sector, and I mean the retail sector. So Macy's went digital, and Nordstrom went digital, and Toys R Us went digital. But what Walmart and Amazon were able to achieve, these firms were not able to get that. And why? Because if everyone was going digital, what was the change? Well, Walmart and Amazon took their entire existence, why they exist, they centered that on technology. And they understood that, and both have different business models. If you think about it, Walmart has physical stores, Amazon doesn't, or it has fewer maybe. But this is, the paradigm change that happened there was that we are all about technology. And we are not just users of technology, we will build our company around technology. And that's what you need to do, is to start thinking about how to rebuild your asset management firm around technology. And that's the paradigm shift. The reason I say you don't have much time is because competition is coming from so many different parts. And AI dynamics have a certain competitive structure to them. And two of those things I'll mention. One is what's known as tech encroachment. This is a word that I use to signify that technology companies don't just keep an IT sector anymore. They go into any sector they want. So grocery business with Whole Foods acquisition, Amazon, auto sector, healthcare sector, financial sector. So tech companies can now go into any sector you can name. So there are no traditional moats anymore. What that means is that your traditional competitors are not just your companies or set of companies that have been competing for the last 20 years, but a new large number of fintech and big tech and tech companies are coming in that will be going after your market share from multiple angles. So that is the tech encroachment part. That's one thing. Second thing is that capital itself is changing. So the nature of capital is changing. So this new shift that's happening is a new retail class that's emerging, investor class, as well as ESG focus. So you need to embrace that. And if you don't embrace that, then capital will start departing. It will start going to areas in which people can see both the goodness as well as returns, the blended alpha signals, and that's where you need to focus on. So if we are not doing that, I think that we will start falling behind. And if we start falling behind, eventually we should know that we are in the midst of being disintermediated. So that's the key word. We are in the midst of being disintermediated. If we don't transform ourselves, it's only a matter of time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ali, for this wonderful interview. It was really interesting and eye-opening, hopefully, for our audience as well. And they embark their journey towards AI and building a meaningful AI soon.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to say that, your organization, all the meetings that you do, all the conferences that you do, it creates so much value for the industry. And, even though we have gone through this COVID period and traditional conferences not happening, but the fact that you transition yourself into this, digital media, I think it's very good. The benefits are there. They stayed regardless of the change. And I've spoken at many of your conferences, and I loved listening to other speakers and meeting with other people. You get the best audience possible. So I think, and best speakers possible. So thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you very much for the kind words. Thank you.
Take care.